What's going on, Shane? How are we doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. We got end of the first period between Philly and the Islanders. Philly up 2-1. What are you thinking about that tonight?
Quite honestly, I just basically got off work and I hopped on here, so I haven't even watched any of the game yet. But, um, you know, we were talking about it before we went live here, Tim. We need to see some more game sevens.
Oh,
And I mean, I'm super pumped that Colorado forced game seven last night. I hope Flyers and Vancouver can do the same because there's nothing better than like game seven NHL playoff hockey.
absolutely.
Um,
On top of the fact that there's no fans, like we need something. We need some more
mhm.
sevens. We need some close series.
And this is completely like not a hockey topic, but like game seven, Houston Rockets and Oklahoma City Thunder last night, like that is the kind of sports that I love to watch. Like my God, that was just back and forth. By the way, guys, stay tuned for Behind the Basket after this. You've got actually a Rockets fan and a Thunder fan hosting that show, and you definitely don't want to miss that. But yes, we do need more game sevens, guys, in the NHL playoffs for sure. And I think Philly, I think Philly is going to do it.
Yeah,
One talking point that we have here is Oscar Lindblom is a member of the Flyers. He's 23 or 24 years old. First game back is tonight after his cancer diagnosis in December. This guy, Oscar Lindblom, the definition of a trooper and a true inspiration. Doesn't let cancer wreck his career. And he's back tonight. Looks to be flying on all cylinders, and the Islanders gave him some stick taps when he went on the ice. Just a beauty, like unreal guy.
who would have ever thought in the same year that he would get diagnosed with cancer, go through treatment, and be back in the playoffs on the verge
Hmm.
of the conference finals? Un-
Hmm.
like unbelievable story. Philadelphia up 2-1 as we speak. I think if they take tonight's game, they're gonna take the series.
Yeah. Heather just says go Philadelphia, and she's glad Oscar was able to play due to his story on the cancer. Yeah, exactly. Just like Tim said, um, you know, when you get diagnosed with cancer, obviously, like you don't it's very uncertain. You don't know when you're ever going to get back to your normal life. And the fact that he got diagnosed with cancer in December and now it's beginning of September and he's back playing, just unreal. Like power through his treatment, defeated cancer, and he's back playing and just a true inspiration to everyone. Um, Now, another talking point, Tim, we're going to get into talking about the remaining series later on in the show. One thing that I did want to cover tonight is Bill Zito to Florida. Bill Zito is the ex assistant general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Panthers hired him as their general manager on Tuesday, I believe. So when you look at Zito's resume, he worked as a player agent for 20 some years. He was assistant manager with Columbus Blue Jackets since 2013. It is quite impressive. The Blue Jackets under Zito and the current GM Jarmo Kekalainen have made the playoffs the past 4 years. And when Zito worked as a player agent, we lost him. I'll keep going. There he is. When Zito worked as a player agent, he actually represented players like Tuukka Rask, Tim Thomas, a whole bunch of guys like that. James Wisniewski was another guy, and he actually was the main contributor to those guys getting cap-friendly contracts to help their team members. I don't think Bill Zito is I don't think it's a bad hiring. I think they maybe could have got someone a little bit more experienced, given that they're in Florida and it's in
I don't,
Sunrise.
I don't think he's the solution to it.
Hey, Elizabeth. Elizabeth watching a hockey show. Wow. Sorry, what were you saying, Tim?
I don't think he's the solution to it. Like
I don't either.
I don't think he's a terrible hiring, but I don't think he's the absolute solution to what the Panthers need to do. Like I
Um,
there's just many steps I feel the Panthers need to take to become a contender, and a few of those steps. Like, you can't be a successful hockey team when you only have like 5 to 7,000 people in the stands every night. Like
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you look at the guys that contended for that job. You had guys like Peter Chiarelli. As a Oilers fan and a Bruins fan, we're not even going to talk about him. You have guys. Oh, Elizabeth doesn't know what we're talking about. Stay tuned, Elizabeth. We're gonna talk a lot more about stuff that you don't know what we're talking about. As an Oilers fan and a Bruins fan, we're not even going to mention Peter Chiarelli because we both don't really like that guy. But you look at guys like Peter Chiarelli, who was interviewed for the job, George McPhee, who was interviewed for the job. Which, I mean, if you're the Florida Panthers, why don't you hire George McPhee? You look at what he did with Vegas. He took them, a first-year team in the NHL, to the Stanley Cup final in his very first year behind GM. Mind you, I mean, given the expansion draft rules, Vegas was actually gifted with a great team. But George McPhee, he was GM of Washington years back. He's GM of the Vegas Golden Knights, proven GM, and you go with a guy that has no experience as a general manager in the National Hockey League.
That's the one part of the hiring that I have absolutely no clue what the Panthers were thinking. This guy is not, he's an agent. He gets paid. He doesn't run an NHL hockey team. Like, expect this guy to just randomly walk in and run an entire NHL organization.
Well, exactly, yeah. And I mean, you do look, like I say, he does have that impressive resume where, he was, as a player agent, he made, he negotiated with teams and negotiated tons of great cap-friendly contracts. Tuukka Rask, his 8-year, $64 million deal, he's actually still in that deal and is going into the last year of that deal next year. But yeah, it's just one of those hirings that just does not make sense to me at all. We're gonna move on. Jake Allen and a 2022 7th-round pick was traded to Montreal earlier this week. Blues received 2020 3rd and 7th-round draft picks. Tim, what are your thoughts on that trade?
I honestly don't really understand it. I don't know why Montreal would want Jake Allen. Like, Carey Price is definitely past his prime, and he's in his closing years as a goalie, especially elite goalie. Who knows if he's even still in that category? Why are you going after Jake Allen? What is Jake Allen going to do for your team? Like, Jake Allen is going to do absolutely nothing that Carey Price couldn't have done.
Now, when I look at this trade, I look at it two ways. It either tells me, okay, Carey Price is the solidified starter. Jake Allen is the backup because the Canadians don't really have that proven of a backup right now. So Jake Allen kind of solidifies their goaltending tandem if they were to go with Price and Allen. But it also tells me, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Does Montreal have the cap space to pay Allen and Price in that?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to get into. It also tells me that Price could be on his way out, which would open up a whole new can of worms because Price goes out and he requests a trade, or the Canadians announce that they're actively shopping Carey Price. I guarantee you there's going to be teams that inquire on Carey Price like you wouldn't believe.
I know.
And go ahead.
It would be unbelievable what teams would be willing to give up,
Yeah, and Martin just said Montreal getting Jake Allen is interesting. Makes him think if Price is going to be there after this offseason. That's exactly it. Honestly, between me and you, Tim, I would find it extremely, extremely hard and weird to see Carey Price in a jersey that's not a Montreal Canadiens jersey. But that could very well happen this offseason.
Exactly. Like, we've seen stranger things in the sports world this offseason. We've seen Tom longer a Patriot, so
yeah, exactly. Tom Brady is no longer a Patriot, and that's it's going to be hard enough to watch him in a Buccaneers jersey. Now, what are the pros and the cons to this trade, Tim? Like, who do you think won that trade in the long run?
I honestly, I don't know. Like, I think the Blues did because Allen isn't necessarily a goalie that I would want on my team because you're gonna pay him a decent salary, but
Hmm.
he's not a goalie that I would want to go on a playoff run with at all.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it also, like, we look at it this way. Binnington, okay, Binnington's already solidified starter in St. Louis. Like, that's not a question. But now that they got rid of Allen, who do they have as a backup? Like, do the Blues actively shop on the offseason to look for a decent backup? Because now you're looking at a situation like the Toronto Maple Leafs where you have Freddie Anderson, no backup. Now you got Jordan Binnington, no backup. So now what do the Blues do in the offseason? Do they find another goalie? Can they afford another goalie? Or what do you think happens there?
And guess what? The worst part is Bennington was exposed this playoffs.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
he got lit up the last couple games before the Blues were eliminated. So, like,
Hmm.
yeah, he led the Blues and helped the Blues to a Stanley Cup last season. But what does that mean, like, moving forward? Who knows?
Hmm.
Do that year in and year out.
I mean, Jordan Binnington, he reminds me a lot of Cam Talbot. That year that the Oilers made the playoffs in 2017, Cam Talbot had an unbelievable year. And Oilers fans, including myself, are going off about, we have found this starter. Cam Talbot's going to be our long-term starter. And then, 2 or 3 years later, Cam Talbot's no longer with the Oilers because he just kind of went downhill after that one year. He had that one good year. That kind of reminds me, Binnington had that one good year where he wrote it out, led the Blues to a Stanley Cup championship. He was okay this year. Playoffs, like you said, he was very inconsistent. But I mean, I honestly think if Binnington doesn't really perform that well, or if he has like a save percentage, I would say if you're looking at a save percentage less than .910, then
Yeah,
it's a failure. It's a failure for the Blues for sure.
absolutely. And
Hmm.
like you said with Cam Talbot, Bennington kind of reminds me of like Matt Murray.
Yeah. Hmm. Matt Murray, exactly.
His build, his play, like I feel like there's a few areas of the game that and can be exposed at, like glove side 5 hole. You put it on him in the
Yeah.
right spot, expose him fairly easy.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, speaking of Matt Murray, we're gonna get to that topic in a second here. But before we move on to that, now Tim, just do you like what do you think this means for Carey Price this trade? Like, do you think the Canadians keep him? Do you think they try to trade him? What do you think they do?
If I'm the Canadians, I gotta let Price just stay with us until he retires. Like
Hmm.
you gotta pay him until he retires. But if you're bringing in another goalie that can start, they very well might be trying to get out of his contract in the past
Hmm.
couple years that he
Hmm.
had.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at Carey Price, though. Carey Price has actively come out in more times than one, and he said he's not retiring till he wins the Stanley Cup. Now, is Montreal the best place to do that? Because obviously, you're not going to be 50 years old and still playing. You just can't, right? So is Montreal the best place for Carey Price to stay if he wants to win a cup? He is 33 years old. He's past his prime. He's still got maybe 5, 6 years left in him. Do you think Carey Price needs to go somewhere else in order to have that a legitimate shot at a cup?
Absolutely. Montreal will not win a cup in the next 5 years. They just are not built for that.
Hmm.
Few teams in the league that he could go to, but
Yeah.
those have to be willing to, yeah, you're going to get a goalie that's outside of his prime, and you're probably going to be overpaying him a little bit just because of the name.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. I mean, yeah, you think Carey Price, you don't want to sign him to like a $6, $7 million deal because it's Carey Price, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, Carey Price is a goalie just because of the name, one of the more elite goaltenders in the league. He's a goalie you got to pay at least 9 million, maybe 8 million. We'll say 8 million minimum for Carey Price. And yeah, his contract's going to be up right away. He's definitely going to be looking at a pay raise with especially with how he performed in this year's playoffs. Carey
ab-
Price was an absolute brick wall in these playoffs, man.
yeah,
He's
absolutely,
Carey Price alone was the reason why Montreal beat Pittsburgh in the qualifiers.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And honestly, Montreal was not blown out by Philadelphia in the first round by any
No,
means.
no, no, no. They lost. I think all four of the games they lost. They lost by like one, maybe two goals. Like they
Yeah,
were in it all the games. They were in that game, right? So Carey Price, I mean, he's proven he's an elite goaltender. He's definitely a starter. It's going to be interesting what happens with Carey Price for sure.
And it's not easy. Montreal Atlantic Division. You have
Mm,
Tampa Bay, you have Boston, you have Toronto. As much as we joke about Toronto, they
they're a
do
good team.
they do have a dangerous team if their offense is
Hmm.
rolling. That's
Hmm.
your right there that would make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Tampa Bay and Boston, those two teams are built. They're going to be legit teams for like a couple of years yet, anyways. So, I mean, Tampa Bay, Boston, they're going to be consistently probably top three in the division for the next 4 or 5 years. So then that, three teams in each division for sure make the playoffs. You got the first team and then the second and third. But I see Boston and Tampa, being part of those top three. Now, is Montreal good enough to challenge Toronto to that third spot in the Atlantic?
I think they have a couple years under their belt before they even get to that level.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Now, going on to our next topic here, Matt Murray. Matt Murray, currently, right now, according to the TSN, which is the main sports network in Canada, Matt Murray is currently the most likely goaltender to be moved in the offseason. Now, do you think Matt Murray gets traded before we go any further?
I think he does.
Mm-hmm.
GM Rutherford has even hinted that he wants to move on from Murray.
Mm-hmm.
He Murray over Murray. So he's a restricted free agent right now. I absolutely think the Penguins move on from Murray and they get some young talent because, as we saw in the playoffs this year, the Penguins are getting a little older and a little slower.
Right, exactly. So let's say the Penguins trade Murray. They've got Casey DeSmith and Tristan Jarry. Tristan Jarry has started, quite a bit of games this season and in the playoffs for sure. Do you think Tristan Jarry has what it takes to become that new starting goaltender in Pittsburgh if Murray were to get traded?
I think he's solid enough to start in the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know necessarily if he's to the level of bringing the Penguins back to winning Stanley Cups. I think the Penguins
Right.
have at least a couple years of getting younger and getting more talent before they get back to that level.
Right. And I think, personally, if you ask me, I don't think Jari is completely there to be a solidified number one starter for the Penguins just yet. I think if the Penguins were to move Murray or trade Murray, they probably wouldn't want to trade for another goaltender, but they would want to, I think, get another goaltender and then kind of run a tandem, kind of like what the Oilers did with Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen this year, kind of just alternate goaltenders like that, or with Boston with Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak. I think the Penguins, like I don't see Tristan Jarry being that permanent starter as of right now in Pittsburgh, and I think they just need to get that they want to move on from Murray. Jim Rutherford, like you said, came out and said that. I think you just need to pick up another goalie that's semi-proven and then kind of ride out Jari and this other goaltender kind of in a tandem like other teams have done. Now, that being said, which teams would be the best fit for Murray? Now, before you answer that, Tim, the Pittsburgh Penguins are believed to have one standing offer on the table right now for Matt Murray. What team that's with, we don't know quite yet, but we can confirm that 6 teams are interested in Pittsburgh. 4 of them are Canadian teams. The 6 teams are the Maple Leafs, the Oilers, the Flames, the Senators, the Sabres, and the Avalanche. Now, all 6 of those teams I can see having, a legitimate reason on why they would want to push for Matt Murray. Um, but of those 6 teams, which one do you think has, needs a Matt Murray or a starting goaltender the most?
I mean, I just put out an article this morning about this topic, and I had the Edmonton
Mm-hmm.
Oilers number one. If
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton gets a goalie like Matt Murray that can get a fresh start and win a couple games that maybe they shouldn't win when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are off a few nights and maybe they get outshot, they get outplayed, but their goalie stands on his head. Matt Murray could be that guy, and if he can be that guy for Edmonton, that's a dangerous team right there.
See, and I agree with you on that one. I would love nothing as an Oilers fan. I would love nothing more than for Matt Murray to come to Edmonton. But the only thing that I concerns me is the cap space because if you trade for Matt Murray, you're going to have to give up something quite large in return, whether that be a Darnell Nurse or a Ryan Nugent Hopkins or both, in fact. But you know, if you're the Oilers, you do want to clear that cap space because Matt Murray is going to be, if he comes to Edmonton, he's going to be the solidified starter. Now, with that being said, if Murray were to go to Edmonton, who do you move on from Koskinen or Smith? That's an easy choice, easy decision.
I would say Koskinen.
Really, you're going to say Koskinen? Wow.
I would keep Koskinen.
Oh, keep Koskinen. Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to say too.
Smith is older and he's just not like consistent at all.
Mm-hmm. Smith's best years are behind him. He's 38 years old. He's not getting any younger, obviously. He's going to be 40 right away, and I mean it's about that time to retire. But Koskinen, you know, he's been the starter, or you know, a partial starter, I guess, for the Oilers for the past 2 years. I feel confident having Koskinen in the back of the net. Now, yeah, Edmonton has $516,000 in cap space. That's not a lot.
No, you
Plain
got
and simply, that's not a lot. You're going to have to move 2 or 3 players in order to land a Matt Murray, or if you want to do anything. Now, Ken Holland's got probably the most difficult job out of any GM in Edmonton in the National Hockey League right now, just for that reason. But now, Koskinen, I do feel okay with him being in the net. Mike Smith, get rid of him. As an Oilers fan, get rid of him. He's 38 years old. He's old. He scares me when he's in the net because he likes to go, but like he gave up so many goals this year because he likes to go behind the net and play the puck, and then he misplays the puck, gives it up, they shoot to wide open net, score. Like that happened in the playoffs against Chicago. Mike Smith did that like twice. I don't feel confident with Mike Smith in that at all. So move on from him. Get that Matt Murray, Mikko Koskinen tandem. You're set in goaltender. That's one of the holes that Edmonton needs. Now, that being said, Matt Murray, the Toronto Maple Leafs make a good decision for him too, or make a good case for him too. Toronto Maple Leafs are exactly like the Oilers. They don't have a lot of cap space, but if you get someone like Murray, you're going to have to get rid of Freddie Anderson, and then you're still in that same situation where you don't have a proven backup in Toronto. Now, would you rather have Freddie Anderson or Matt Murray in the back of your net if you're Toronto?
I was just going to ask that. Is Matt Murray even better than Freddie Anderson? I think Freddie Anderson's a better goalie.
I do too. I think he's more proven. He's older. He's more proven.
You're going to be downgrading if you just trade Anderson for Murray. There's no way that Murray is going to bring you anything that Anderson wouldn't.
And let's be real here. Anderson is a starting goaltender in this league. Matt Murray, if he gets traded, he's going to want to go to a team where he can become the solidified starter. So you don't want to put Matt Murray and Freddie Anderson on the same team because then, unless you're going to do like kind of like a goaltending tandem where they both play 50% of the games, you don't want one goalie to be the solidified starter because neither one of those two are going to want to be the backup.
Exactly.
Right? Now, another thing I was going to say, the Avalanche. Now, is Philip Grubauer a proven starter for the Avalanche?
I think so. I don't see why he wouldn't be a proven starter for the Avalanche. Yeah, he got hurt in game 1 of this round, but it's not like he's given up games like because of his performance. I just don't think necessarily that standout elite goalie. So he doesn't have a big a name for himself as other goalies do.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where Matt Murray lands in the offseason, whether he stays with Pittsburgh or moves. But we'll definitely keep tabs on that as the situation escalates. We're going to move on because we've got a lot more to talk about in the next half an hour here, Tim. Speaking of Colorado, we were just talking about Matt Murray possibly going to Colorado. Philip Grubauer injured. Starting goaltender for the Avalanche, he's injured for no one knows really how long, but he is still out with an injury. Now that leaves Colorado in kind of a difficult situation because you've got Frank Coos. I don't know what his first name is, but Frank Coos was the goalie, which the Avalanche, I mean, they fell behind 3-1 to Dallas in the series. I think solely because Frank Kuz is not a experienced enough goaltender. When you're playing in the semifinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs, you need to have a experienced starter behind the pipes. That's or between the pipes. That's a no-brainer there. But Avs goalie Michael Hutchinson came in game 5 and 6 and won both games, and he played unreal. So if you're the Avs, do you ride out Michael Hutchinson or what do you do?
I think I write out Mike Hutchinson.
Now, what happens if you ride out Mike Hutchinson and then, like, let's say the Avs go on and they win Game 7 against the Stars, they move on. Game 3 or 4 next series, Philip Grubauer comes back, but Mike Hutchinson's hot. Do you keep Hutchinson in net or do you go back to your starter in Grubauer?
I've always thought that in the playoffs, if someone's hot, you can't take them out.
Fair point.
Because, like, you don't know. Say Grubauer comes back from injury. He could be stone cold and be completely terrible, let in 3 goals in, like, the first 5 minutes of the game. But that doesn't mean that he's not the better goalie between the two. It just means at this current moment, he's not the best goalie between the two.
Yeah, exactly. That being said, if Hutchinson performs well, so let's say Grubauer comes back and Hutchinson performs well, and let's just say, hypothetically, you ride out Hutchinson the rest of the playoffs, he leads the Avalanche to a Stanley Cup. Does this solidify him as a permanent backup to Grubauer, or perhaps even a starter? Or what do you do if they ride out Hutchinson, they win a Stanley Cup? If you're Jared Bednar and Joe Sakic, what do you do with Mike Hutchinson? Do you keep him? Do you trade him? Do you keep him as a backup? What do you do?
I think you definitely have to keep him. But I don't think that owe him the starting role. I just think that earns him a roster spot. I think that's him on Colorado.
Because at the end of the day, I do believe Grubauer is still like a healthy Grubauer and a healthy Hutchinson. I would take healthy Grubauer 100% of the time.
Absolutely. But you don't, at this point, if he has a week and a half off and play, what that's going to do to his game.
Exactly. And I do agree with you there. If Mike Hutchinson stays hot, Avs can manage to win Game 7. I definitely think you're going to have to ride it out. But you're most likely going to be playing Vegas first round unless Vancouver, some miracle happens. But, Mike Hutchinson against a very, very dangerous Vegas team, he's going to have to be on his game.
Absolutely.
100%. Moving on to the next topic, we're going to talk about your favorite topic, Tim. I know how much you love this guy, Zdeno Chara. So the future of longtime Bruins captain. He's been the captain of the Bruins for years, as long as I can remember. The future of Zdeno Chara is up in the air right now. Reason being, he's 43 years old, and he's not the same Chara that he was 10 years ago. Now, Tim, as a Bruins fan, a diehard Bruins fan, what do you do? Chara retire? If Chara does not retire, do you keep him? What do you do?
I just hope he retires, because if he does retire, I feel the Bruins at this point are obligated to just keep signing him to 1-year deals.
Yeah.
Because he does sign team-friendly deals. It's not like he's signing for a lot of money. But come on, man. You're 43 years old. It's like everybody wants Tom Brady to retire because he's 43. He's old. He's so old. Well, Chara's just as old as him.
But Tom Brady's actually still relevant, though. Chara, that series against Tampa Bay, he looked so slow, man. Like, he was behind the play. And he, like I said, he's not the same Chara he was 10 years ago. Tom Brady, yeah, he's 43 years old. But, he led the Patriots to, not the Super Bowl last year, but, 2015, 2016, 2017. He was in the playoffs, or I think, anyways. You know what I mean? 2017, 18, 19. He led the Patriots to 3 straight Super Bowl appearances.
Give it up, man. Like, you suck. Like,
Yeah, and Tom Brady, like, he's still relevant with Tampa Bay. I do believe that he could leave the Bucs. But anyways, we're not a football show. We won't talk about that. But yeah, 43-year-old Zdeno Chara. Now, if he does not retire, and Boston feels they don't want to keep him, do you think there's still a valuable trade market for Zdeno Chara at 43 years old?
No, there's no trade value for Chara at this point at all.
Would you trade him for draft picks?
I feel like that would be all you could trade him for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even know what you would get for Chara, because all you would be trading Chara for is like locker room leadership. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
trading Chara for on ice performance.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
on ice performance. All he
Mm-hmm.
has to offer is what his knowledge is in the locker room. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you
Mm-hmm.
will, like, I honestly never thought that Chara was even that good besides a hard shot and a long reach. He
Yeah,
was never,
exactly.
he always got burnt. And if he could reach you with a stick, then yeah, he could catch up to you. But other than that, he was terrible.
I mean, as of right now, Chara is not signed for the 2020 and 2021 season, so that is still up in the air there. But another thing there with Chara, like, yeah, he's got a hard shot, he's got a long reach. He's also 6'9", right? So I mean, he's a protector. He hits. He's a big body out there, right? You can get in front of the goaltender, screen the goalie because no one can see over a 6'9" player. But at the same time, like you said, he's 43 years old. He's not the same Chara he was. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there. If something were to happen where Chara were to retire or get traded, or just Bruins chose not to re-sign him and no one picks him up, who do you think, Tim, as a Bruins fan, would be named captain in Chara's absence? Do you think the Bruins go with 4 assistants, or do you think um,
I think
they Bergeron? That's who I was thinking too. Bergeron, leadership kind of guy. He's been with the team for a long time. He's a Selk nominee, God knows how many years. Selk nominee is for the best defensive forward, I believe.
yep.
But yeah, I would definitely say Patrice Bergeron. Do you give the C to someone young like David Pastrnak?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think unless you're a generational talent, you get the C as a young player. I could understand giving you the assistant captain, and then after 3 or 4 years, if you are a good leader on and off the ice, yeah, you get the C. But I think at this point, it's got to go to Bergeron. Granted, Bergeron's been on Boston longer than Chara has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. What about someone like Brad Marchand?
I don't think he mentally has the capacity to be a captain of an NHL team.
I love how this just turned into Brad Marchand's mental capacity. uh, but yeah, no, Patrice Bergeron is a solid choice. That's who I was thinking too. I mean, that's the only one really that comes to mind. Unless you give it to, a young stud on the defense like Jake DeBrusk, but even then, I can't see Jake DeBrusk or Charlie McAvoy or anyone like that, a young defenseman like that. Or what about Torrey Krug? Or do you think Torrey Krug's on the way out?
After what I saw today, it seems like he could be on his way out. I hope he's not,
Mm-hmm.
but he's definitely due getting a good contract.
What about Krejci? Heather Young just said. Krejci's another one that's been with the Bruins for a long time. He's got
He's
leadership. What do you think about Krejci?
he's a solid second line center right now, and he's up there in age. If the Bruins want to clear any cap space, he's the first guy that I think they're gonna want to move, because they don't
Really?
necessarily need him. I don't think, just put
Oh,
Coyle
okay.
on center and throw a young guy third, fourth line, and that fills that role right there. Because Krejci's like the highest paid player on the Bruins.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, Krejci is a great player.
Absolutely,
Krejci was awesome in the playoffs this year.
absolutely. I just feel as a franchise moving forward, if you want to clear cap space, that's the way
Hmm.
to go.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100% there. We're gonna get into series recaps and stuff right away. One more topic I want to go over before we get into talking about the series and what's happening in the NHL right now. The Dallas Stars defenseman Andre Sekera, former Oiler, said recently in an interview that the bubble life is beginning to wear on players. His exact quote was, "All we do is travel from arena to hotel and hotel to arena. We eat the same food. We do the exact same off day activities. All we do is play cards or PS4. All we do is that we miss our families and we just want to go home. Do you think now someone like Andre Sekera saying we just want to go home? To me, that tells me that the Stars aren't in it to win it.
No, and I think there's numerous teams that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've hard to believe that there aren't players on each team that are like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually think of what they're living through right now. Okay, yeah, they're living in 5-star hotels and they're making their millions and they're playing the game that they love. But still, they've been in a hotel room for the past couple months, no family contact, no fans, no nothing, just rank back, rank back, rank back. Like that does have to get old after a while.
I mean, but sometimes when you're living in the bubble life, you just gotta, you gotta sneak two strippers in there for your goaltender that stops 42 or 43 shots. If you guys haven't heard of that story, Vancouver Canucks and Vegas Golden Knights, game six, no, game five.
Five.
Vancouver won. Yeah, Vancouver won 2-1. Thatcher Demko, young goaltender, started that game, stopped 42 of 43 shots. Vancouver Canucks got fined $45,000 for sneaking two strippers into the Edmonton bubble for Thatcher Demko for that performance.
Only in
Only in Edmonton, man.
only in the NHL. It doesn't happen in any other
Yeah,
sport.
yeah. How to sneak
Like
strippers into the NHL bubble? Ask Vancouver, exactly.
all this bubble Stanley Cup playoffs has made me think about is like, what do you imagine it would have been like in like the 70s and 80s if they did this?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Like,
70s and 80s, there would have been no fine. People just would have laughed at it and been like, "Huh, that's awesome."
yeah,
Um, and quite honestly, I think if there wasn't this whole COVID thing and it was in a bubble, like let's just say there was no coronavirus, Vancouver was in Vegas for this game. If they were in Vegas for like game 3 and 4, let's say, where you're staying in Vegas in a hotel for those games, and Thatcher Demko stops 42 or 43 shots in game 3, and you
strip.
strict and you sneak Vegas strippers into your hotel when there's no coronavirus, nothing's
No,
gonna happen. Nothing's gonna
no,
happen. The only reason why they got fined is because of the coronavirus and because it's supposed to be the bubble, and you're not supposed to have anyone in there, which I get. But in any other situation, this would not have been a fine. This just would have been one of those stories that you laugh at and been like, "Oh, that's hilarious."
yeah. It's like
um,
it's like when Kuznetsov got caught with cocaine in his hotel room in that Instagram post.
exactly, exactly. But now these players being in the bubble for, they've been in the bubble since July 26th, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a little over a month now. Do you think, like Andre Sekera said, being in the bubble, going from arena to hotel, eating the same food, doing the same things, do you think that's a bit of a distraction? And do you think it affects the performance of the players? How do you think the bubble life is like, treating these players? Do you think it's
I think
altering
it
the performance?
depends on the player itself. I think
Mhm.
certain benefit from like a scheduled routine, like you do the same thing day in, day out. But there's got to be some players that just want to get out, explore like the city, and like live playoff like hockey night in, night out. So I can see it going both ways. I think for some players, it's benefiting them. Like they're probably more focused. But in other players' cases, they got to be going crazy. And I can
Yeah,
completely understand why they're going crazy.
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, hotel beds are nice, but I mean, I get it. There's just some players, you want to sleep in your own bed, you want to go home, you want to see your wives, your kids, and I mean, it's got to be tough for them. I understand that, and 2020 is just one of those years, man. Nothing is normal in 2020 anymore.
So
um,
what are you thinking about the Vegas Vancouver series? Like, do you think Vancouver forces another game tonight?
um, Here's what I think about Vegas and Vancouver. I think you got to start Demko again.
Yep, absolutely.
After the performance that he had, he's gonna be hot. After those strippers that he had so much fun with in the hotel, he's gonna want more of that. Obviously, there's not gonna happen, but Markstrom has not impressed me in the playoffs.
No,
Something about Jacob Markstrom, he just has not impressed me at all. And with the performance, I watched Game 5 there. The performance that Thatcher Demko had, he was in the zone. He was dialed into that game. He stopped 42 of 43 shots. I think you got to give him another chance.
absolutely. I mean, just like the qualifying round, yeah, Markstrom was pretty solid, but since the qualifying round, he hasn't been nothing special. It's
Yeah,
just
he's just been that average goaltender.
yeah, it's just been
Hmm.
those talents that are getting them through. But when
Hmm.
Demko came in and stepped in last game, it was like a whole different game. Who would have thought that Vancouver would have only allowed one goal on 43 shots, and
Exactly.
a game when they only got 17 shots against Vegas?
And I guarantee you, Tim, if Jacob Markstrom started that game, Vancouver would be going home right now.
Yeah,
Vegas would be advanced. So I think if you're Vancouver, if you're Travis Green making the decisions behind the bench, you need to start Thatcher Demko. Like I said, Jacob Markstrom has been okay so far in the playoffs. He was solid in that qualifying series against Minnesota. He was nothing really special in the first round of playoffs there against St. Louis. But you know, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you need to be if you're a goaltender, you need to be not okay. You need to be stellar to win a Stanley Cup. Uh, okay performances or average performances aren't going to win you a Stanley Cup in the playoffs. Not in this day and age in the NHL.
no, especially in the goaltending category. You're like
Mm-hmm.
goalie is arguably the most crucial component of your team.
Yeah,
That able to score goals.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. Now, also, if you're Vancouver, you need to get more than 17 shots.
Yeah,
Another key of the game.
like you do not win a playoff game against a team like Vegas often with only 17 shots. That just
And and I mean, like Tim, we're both hockey players. You know, we both obviously like me being from Canada. I was basically born on hockey skates, and you're a hockey player. Um, uh, my coach always told me, or my coaches have always told me, and I think you can agree with this one. Good things happen when you shoot the puck on net.
oh, absolutely.
Um, 17 shots in a game, any other game, you would not have won this. Thatcher Demko, by all aspects of that game, won that game for Vancouver.
Yeah, that's like 6 shots per period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're not going to win a game.
No.
I mean, you're not going to win another game getting 6 shots, an average of 6 shots per period. That's just not going to happen. Especially when you have defense like Vegas, like Shea Theodore, Alec Martinez, guys like that that are playing big minutes. You need to find a way to change your game plan. Draw some penalties too, because Vancouver's power play. You got guys like Horvat, Quinn Hughes, Pedersen, Bester, probably one of the better power play units left in the playoffs. You got to find a way to draw those penalties, get that power play minutes, and just fire the puck on net. Good things happen when you shoot the puck on net. It could be deflected, anything like that, right? Now, that being said, I think Vancouver possibly squeaks out a win, but I don't think they have quite what it takes to beat Vegas. Vegas is just a little bit too strong, in my opinion.
If Vancouver wins tonight, it's because of Demko.
Yeah.
Vegas is going to. I have to say, I would put my money on Vegas. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too.
Who would have? They would have made it to the second round of the playoffs and forced a game 6 against Vegas. Like that's nothing to hang your heads on for Canucks fans.
I mean, either way you look at it, it's been a successful season for Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like making it to the second round of playoffs, obviously it's not the end goal. The end goal is to win the cup, but only one team out of 31 teams wins the cup at the end of the year. So making it to the second round playoffs, I would say, is an accomplishment, a successful season for any team, whether, depending on whatever team you are. If you make it to the second round of playoffs, it's a successful season in my eyes.
Absolutely. You made it to the final 8.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Now, sticking with the Western Conference, there we're going to move to Dallas and Colorado. Game 7 hockey. I thought Colorado was down and out after Dallas went up 3-1. I was thinking, man, it's going to be an upset, man. Colorado has been pegged by numerous people to even like win the cup and get to the finals. But Colorado, man, game 5, they absolutely destroyed Dallas.
Absolutely. Like when Dallas went up 3-1, I was like, if Colorado can force a game 6, they'll be lucky. And
Yeah.
then Dallas went up 3-1. Colorado has absolutely destroyed them. It's like they just turned on a light switch, and it's been Colorado since. I don't see it being anything different.
5 goals for Colorado. Colorado was leading 5-0 after the
Yep.
first period in that game. And I mean, you and I both knew that game was over after the first period. Like, yeah, 5-0 after the first. Yeah, crazy.
They go back in game 6 and beat Dallas 4-1. Like that's a win right there. So they've outscored Dallas 10-4 in the past 2 games. That's a statement. I fully expect them to win game 7 and go on to the Western Conference Finals. I just think it's a bit of a hiccup.
Right. Now, one thing that I did see, Nathan MacKinnon, absolutely on fire. Get this for a stat, Tim. He's got 20 points in the first 2 series of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The last player to score 20 points in the first 2 series of the Stanley Cup playoffs, Wayne Gretzky in 1993. Unreal. Nathan MacKinnon is like a gift for Colorado.
I also saw this stat. He's gone 14 games straight with a point, which ties Mark Messier.
Yeah, and like if you're Nathan MacKinnon and you're in the same conversation and the same company as Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier, which are 2 of the greatest players to ever play the game,
you're doing something right.
You're doing something exactly, for sure. Mind you, Colorado, I mean, like, very well coached team. Joe Sakic as a GM knows what he's doing, and they have a good team. They've got Nazem Kadri, who's been a very great pickup for Joe Sakic and the Avalanche. You've got guys like Rantanen, Landeskog, MacKinnon. You got Cale Makar, who's been a stud on defense. I think Colorado has what it takes now. They've got all the momentum in this series, and I think Dallas goes home.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that one. Dallas pushed them to the breaking point, but Colorado showed up.
Yeah, and Heather made a great point here. I'm surprised how well Colorado's playing since they lost some of their big players like their top goalie. Exactly. Mike Hutchinson came in his time of need, and he's been very, very good. He just needs to play. I mean, like, you have guys like Anton Khudobin, who I believe, if the Stars don't start Anton Khudobin in net on Game 7, automatic loss.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
They put in Ben Bishop in Game 5. Ben Bishop let in 5 goals in the first period. And which, I don't know, that was the stupidest thing you could have done, because you played Anton Khudobin literally all of the playoffs. You switch it up, you put Ben Bishop in net. I get it was a back-to-back game. I get it. But Anton Khudobin has been the heart and soul of Dallas's team in the playoffs. And then you put in a cold goalie who hasn't stepped foot on the ice all playoffs, and that's what happens. And now you're going to Game 7 with Colorado. That's what happens.
When it comes to playoffs, you can't just stick a cold goalie in. This isn't like the regular season. Like, when it comes to play, every game is make or break. Every game is a must win. And if you got a goal, you have to leave him in. Like, you just got to.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting for sure. But I do have Colorado winning Game 7. We've got about 8 minutes to cover 2 more series, Tim. So we're going to get into the Eastern Conference now, starting with Boston and Tampa. This is the only series as of right now that is completed. Tampa took out Boston in 5 games. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, pretty disappointing as a Boston fan. I figured Boston could take them to 6 or 7 games, but we saw that Tampa Bay is a physical team this year. They out-hit numerous games. They out hit Columbus in numerous games in the first round. Tampa Bay is not only able to still score at will, but they can now play physical, and they showed it against Boston.
And this Tampa Bay team, which hasn't really changed much, remember you last year they won the President's Trophy, 62 wins in the season, got swept in the first round by Columbus. And this Tampa Bay team hasn't really changed all that much since that sweeping last year.
They just added a few pieces, third, fourth line, and that was a little bit of toughness, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, all those guys on Tampa Bay knew, how bad that felt to finish with 62 wins and get swept by a team like Columbus in the first round. No one wanted to see that happen again. I think Tampa Bay turned a switch on. They've proven that they are a lethal team when everyone's healthy and doing good. And good news for Tampa Bay. Nikita Kucherov got injured in Game 5 there against Boston. Good news for Tampa. It's not long term. He was on the ice for practice on Tuesday, and they have announced that he will be activated for Game 1 against Philly or Islanders, whoever they play there, which is Kucherov's a huge part of that team as well.
If Stamkos can come back from his injury as well, that's even bigger because Tampa Bay just took down Boston without Stamkos.
Yeah, exactly.
Key factor that people need to realize is they had no Stamkos and they took Boston down in 5 games.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And I think that, Tampa Bay, I think they make a strong case for Eastern Conference champions and Stanley Cup finalists.
Absolutely. At this point, from what I've seen Tampa in the first 2 rounds, I think they could go to the Cup easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, which one of Philly and the Islanders would you rather play if you are Tampa Bay? Now, Heather just said, can you see Tampa going all the way to the end?
I could see them going all the way to the finals. At this point, I couldn't tell you if they beat a team like Colorado or a team like Vegas, but Tampa Bay could easily go to the finals.
And so going back to my question, if you're Tampa, would you rather play Philly or Islanders in the next round?
I think I want to play the Islanders.
Why?
I think Philly, you got Carter Hart in net, who's a harder goalie to play against than Varlamov in New York. And New York is a little bit less experienced than Philadelphia is in my eyes. So I'm going with the Islanders. And Islanders, point, they're a shock. Like, no one expected the Islanders to even be giving Philly a run for their money, like in the second round. So each round that they go on is just, they're not even used to that experience. I think at this point, Philadelphia would be more experienced in an Eastern Conference Finals.
Now the Islanders are they're way better coached team though too. So I mean, it is pros and cons there to both of those.
Absolutely, the Islanders. Barry Trotz has that team. Barry Trotz could be coach of the year like every year if you wanted to.
Yeah. And as it stands right now, there is about 5 minutes left in the second intermission. Islanders are up 4-3 on Philly, 20 minutes away from advancing to Tampa Bay. Quite personally, I think if you are Tampa Bay, I would rather play Philadelphia, I think.
Yeah.
Reason being, I'm going to go the exact opposite of what you said. If I had to choose between playing against Carter Hart or Varlamov, it would be Carter Hart. And the reason being, Varlamov is more experienced. He's been to the playoffs before. He played with Colorado. He's been to the playoffs. He knows how to handle the playoffs. Carter Hart is young. He's in his sophomore season. He hasn't really had any playoff experience. Mind you, he has played unbelievable. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you are Tampa Bay, I would rather play Philadelphia just for that reason, because you do have a less experienced goaltender in net. And the Islanders, they're a very scary team, man. And any team coached by Barry Trotz, I would not want to play against personally.
I'll tell you this: neither team would be easy to beat, but I think Tampa Bay takes either team down.
Yeah, I think so too. I was just gonna say that I think no matter which one of Philly or New York advances, I think Tampa Bay is gonna advance anyways. I have Tampa and Colorado as my 2 finalists.
I gotta agree with you because between Vegas and Vancouver, I like I've been saying for the past week or so, whoever wins between Dallas and Colorado is going to the finals. I
Mhm.
don't see Vegas or Vancouver making it past either of those teams.
The only thing that I can see, like let's say Vegas and Colorado move on to the next round, Vegas will have an extreme advantage in goaltender, as in goaltender. Robin Leonard
And Mark
and
Andre.
Marc-Andre Fleury over Mike Hutchinson and some Francouz guy who no one really has ever heard of. So yeah, I think it's going to be definitely a good series for sure. And if you're Colorado playing Vegas next round, definitely want to hope for Grubauer to come back.
Hope that you're scoring on all cylinders.
Yeah, for sure. So, Tim, we are just about out of time here. There it is right there on the banner. Don't forget to tune into Behind the Basket starting in a few minutes with Elizabeth and Hunter. One's a Rockets fan, one's a Thunder fan, and after that, amazing, amazing, amazing Game 7 last night. You're definitely not going to want to miss Behind the Basket.
Unreal.
Unreal. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time. Next